Hello, and welcome to another episode of Starside Chats. Joining me, as always, is Aaron Capo.
Hello.
And I'm Zach Owens. And we got a lot to talk about because it's been a couple weeks since we last did a podcast.
It's true.
And so we got some older news to talk about, but we got some recent news, and we want to talk about sort of games that could make our top 10 list at the end of the year. And then, I don't know about you, Capo, but I've got a ton of stuff on the list of things that I have been playing, just because it has been a few weeks since we last talked. But
I, conversely, have a lot of stuff on my things I've been watching list that I want to talk about.
Actually, I didn't put it on here, but I do have a thing that I've been watching sort of off and on lately that you'll be very pleased about.
Ooh.
So remind me when we get there.
Okay, I'm going to make a note for myself. And the first thing we're going to talk about is Zach's Mystery. Okay, but we can get into some of the news. So in the world of game streaming, there's been a lot of things that has happened within the last few weeks. So first of all, Stadia now works on the new Chromecast with Google TV and other Android TV set-top boxes. Have you tried this? No, I only have my regular, and because the benefit of Google TV, that little Google TV thing, is you get a little remote, right?
Yeah.
And I primarily use my phone. I don't know if I would use the remote as much, because I'm constantly just like watching YouTube or Netflix or something. Whereas the remote, can you talk into it, or is it just like a scroll wheel? I don't know a lot about it.
You can. So the remote, I actually really like it. So I have a NVIDIA Shield TV, which is an Android TV set-top box. And I like, whenever I go hang out at my parents' place, they have a Chromecast with Google TV. Mm-hmm. And so I've played around with it, and it is a very nice remote. It's got like a volume control on it, and it's got like
that is something I would use, actually.
It's got a button so that you can just like talk to the assistant and have it sort of navigate the menus for you. And yeah, it's got like a directional buttons that you can sort of navigate the UI with. And the UI is pretty nice. It's got like all your streaming services there. And now, of course, Stadia is one of the apps that is on there. And I can't tell you how much more I think about playing games on Stadia now that app is just there among like, YouTube and Amazon Prime and whatever other streaming apps I use, as opposed to like needing to switch my input on my TV to the Chromecast Ultra to be able to play games. So I have played more games on Stadia since that update happened. So it's been pretty big for me, but yeah. The Chromecast with Google TV is actually really nice. I like I feel like if you got one, you could still use your phone to cast stuff, but I feel like you would just convert to using the remote, and you would not miss having to go on your phone to cast something.
We were talking about this before we started recording, but it's somewhat likely that in the near to somewhat near future, I will be purchasing a new TV. And I was looking around at things that have like Google TV integrated into it, which I think would be a big game changer. But I don't know if it just has like, because a lot of TVs will say like works with Google Assistant or like built-in Chromecast, but I don't know exactly what that means or like how integrated it is. So I probably would still need one of those dongles. You would.
Most smart TVs do have some sort of Chromecast capability, but it's, in my experience, smart TV like UI and just like the apps built for smart TVs are significantly inferior in terms of like performance to like a Android TV set-top box, like a dedicated set-top box.
Yeah. I think that's probably true.
And so I don't know for sure, but I don't think that Stadia works or has been made to work with just like smart TVs right now.
I think you're right, yeah.
But that could come in the future.
It could. I'm sure it will at some point. That would be huge for Google to be able to say, like, now you don't even need to buy a Chromecast or a set-top box. You just, as long as you have a smart TV, you can wirelessly connect whatever controller you have lying around and start playing games. Mm-hmm. So that would be pretty huge. They need to update their Stadia UI to make it a little bit more like a PlayStation or Xbox, like a UI, like their home screen layout and all of that. But I mean, I've been pretty impressed with how like console like it is. Like you basically wouldn't know that you're streaming the game.
Interesting.
In my experience. So another thing Google talked about fairly recently was they sort of updated their model to, so Steam and Google used to do like a 70, what was it? Was it 70-30? No,
Steam was the bad one where they took a bunch. And then Epic was like, I think Epic was like, oh yeah, we're going to do like a 70-30 or like a 20-80 type thing.
Yeah, so Google did that. I think they switched over to what Epic was doing to try to attract developers to the platform because they're going to be able to make more money with the revenue split. And then sort of one of the, I think, a little bit more controversial things that they switched to was for Stadia Pro titles. They have made it more about based on like playtime. So if a developer brings out a game on Stadia Pro, it will now, like, if that game, like if a player plays the game and then comes back the next day and plays again, and they sort of keep doing that day after day, those count as like play sessions for that game. And the more play sessions add up for that game, the developer will make more money. So the reason why that's controversial is because it seems like they're going to have a hard time attracting like smaller, shorter games or like indie games to Stadia Pro. And it's going to be much more built for games like Destiny or like some sort of, long RPG type of a game. That
is interesting to me, which is something I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But I have been somewhat on the lookout. I mean, that's the dream, is for Stadia to become the metaverse of a kind, because it's always online. It can be a persistent world, and it's like you don't have to like download a bunch of updates continuously. But that's it. That's very interesting.
So, I mean, I kind of worry that we're not going to get as many shorter experiences on Stadia Pro, or like, because like earlier this year, I played Little Nightmares 2 because it was a Stadia Pro title. I probably would not have bought and played that game if it was just like released for Stadia. So the fact that it was free and I didn't have to download anything was like the only reason I played it, and I ended up really liking it. So I worry that maybe some of those types of games will not necessarily come to Pro. I mean, that is specifically just for Stadia Pro. Like, it's like those games will still probably come to Stadia, but they just may not become like a free title of the month for Pro subscribers, which is kind of a shame, but also like they're probably less expensive than like an Assassin's Creed Origins or whatever. Yeah. So there's that. Also, in the world of streaming games, Microsoft xCloud came to iOS and it's now available. I've heard it does not perform as well as Stadia just yet, but I feel like they will get there eventually. I watched a video that the YouTube channel Nerd Nest put out about it, where the guy played, I think it was Destiny, on Stadia and on xCloud to compare them, and he played them with like an Xbox controller connected via Bluetooth and with the Stadia controller, obviously just on Stadia. And the differences he noticed was that performance-wise,
Stadia was much smoother, a much better experience. There was latency, there was some lag in xCloud, and controller-wise, it was the best experience when he was playing Stadia with the Stadia controller, because that's a cloud controller. It's not just sense. Connecting via Bluetooth, so you're not sort of dealing with the latency you're going to deal with there. But all of that is very dependent on like how close you are to servers, and like I don't know. I feel like Stadia's been around a little bit longer, so they kind of have a leg up there. Microsoft will get there with xCloud, so it's just sort of right now, this is where they're at. But I do think it's cool that there are more streaming services coming around, and because I do think it's the future. Like, I don't want physical games to go away or anything like that, but I do just the convenience of being able to play a game without having to download anything, and just to be able to open a browser window to do it is very cool to me.
Yeah, you can't beat it.
And speaking of which, additional streaming services, Netflix said it's going to add game streaming to the service at no additional cost, apparently. I have my doubts about that. I feel like they will eventually up their rates, but...
I saw Jeff Keighley tweeting about this. And so I saw him say, like, you know, he basically posted this article, and then he tacked onto that right below that tweet, this is only relegated to phone games currently.
Really?
Yeah, they're focusing on mobile right now.
So are the games built for mobile, or are they like big normal console games that are just playable on mobile?
I don't know. I just those are the only two tweets I saw about it, and I was like, "That's interesting," but I guess that kind of makes sense.
I also wonder, because Netflix is making their own games. Obviously, they've made games about the Stranger Things universe, and they've got some other things, but they also have, I guess, access to The Witcher and some of these other game franchises.
Yeah, I don't know how those rights shake out.
Yeah, I don't know what the rights situation is there, but I do wonder if maybe they will work out some sort of deal to get games like The Witcher on Netflix.
There's probably teams of hundreds of lawyers trying to figure that out right now.
There probably is, but I mean, it would make a lot of sense, not just because Netflix is probably the biggest streaming service right now, but also like watch season 1 of The Witcher and then play the game.
Yeah. Directly from your phone.
Yeah. So I don't know. I have not been subbed to Netflix for quite some time now, and
I keep forgetting about that. So you haven't seen Beastars?
Beastars? No, I have not.
Wow, you're missing out, man.
Am I? I will probably sub again when like the next season of Stranger Things or the next season of The Witcher comes out, but I will sub, watch it, and then unsub again.
I don't think we haven't really gotten any. There's been like one teaser for the next season of Stranger Things, but we don't even know a release date or like what time of year or where it's going to be set based on the end of the last season. Who knows where it'll be set?
Yeah. I am very curious. I want to say that's supposed to come out later this year, right? Isn't that coming in October?
I mean, how many years apart were the last two seasons? I feel like we were waiting for that 4th of July season forever.
Yeah. It's hard to say. My memory is not very good, and I definitely don't remember how far apart those were. But moving on to Sony news, there's a few things here. So first, Sony bought Housemarque, the developer of Nex Machina and Returnal. And I think it was not necessarily expected, but it was like obvious. Because the Housemarque has basically made games exclusively for Sony for the last several years, so it was like, okay, of course. But Housemarque is a good developer. I'm curious to see what else they make. I need to play more Returnal. I've played some Returnal, not very much.
I've only heard glowing reviews of it.
It's very cool. the problem I had was I am coming off of playing a lot of PC games, and so trying to readjust to like a third-person shooter on a controller was like throwing me off. And it's like not an easy game to begin with, so add on that inability to aim with a thumbstick again, and I was I struggled a little bit, but I need to get back in there and play again. I was enjoying what I had played of it, but then like a ton of other things came out, and so I got kind of sidetracked. And because I got my PS5 at a weird time where I was in the middle of like 5 other games on other platforms, so it was I don't know. I was pulled in a lot of different directions, but I will probably jump back in and play more of that game eventually. Another thing that Sony announced, Ghostwire Tokyo was delayed from October 2021 to an early 2022 window. I'm excited for this game. Is it the last like Bethesda exclusive to come out on Sony? I guess it was announced obviously before Microsoft bought Bethesda, but
yes.
Makes me kind of wonder what they're gonna like, what Sony has for later this year. Like, I know they want Horizon to be like their big fall release. They may.
Can I confess something about Horizon?
Okay.
I'm not super into it.
Did you play it?
No, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is. Like, the art is beautiful, and I like that kind of stealth gameplay, but I started to, like, whet my appetite. I started watching a playthrough on YouTube of the first game, and I just, like, for some reason it didn't look... something didn't click with me, and I don't know why.
So, here's my thing about Horizon, because I ended up liking the first game, and I'm excited to play the second one. But the first, like, hour or two of that game I found very off-putting.
Really?
So part of this goes back to, I had gone back to college the year that game came out, and I was taking some class that was about sort of internet and like gaming culture and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And the professor made us read this article that was written by some professor from some other college somewhere. And it was all about how games do not tell good stories and should not even bother telling stories. They should just make games about gameplay and just give it up already, is basically was his point. Wow. And I was like wildly anti this thing. I was like, what? This is stupid. Like, of course there.
What was the goal of your professor having you read that?
I don't even know. That class was a joke. It was stupid, and I didn't understand the points of it. It was not the class I thought it was going to be, based on the description. So I was not super fond of that class to begin with. But anyway, his point was basically that stories in games are at basically a teen reading level, and I was like, I don't know about that. There are games like Grand Theft Auto and like Mass Effect and all these other types of things.
Yeah, Mass Effect specifically is when I immediately thought of.
And so I thought about all of that stuff, and then like I think shortly after that class ended and I had like a break, I was like, okay, now I'm gonna jump into Horizon Zero Dawn, and obviously it was one of the games that was like praised for its story that year. Mm-hmm. And so I started playing it, and for like the introduction of that game, for the first hour or two, it is just the most generic like teen dystopian fiction story ever. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this is not really just after having read that and been so mad and trying to defend like storytelling in games, to be experiencing this which was being propped up as like one of the best stories told that year. I was like, oh, come on, this guy can't be right. Like, you can't make him right. And so I was not into Horizon for the first, I don't know, few hours of that game. But once you sort of get out of the intro of that, and you get to explore, and you start doing some of the like stealth mechanics and some of the combat and some of the other stuff happening in that game, I got much more into it after that. but it was rough going for a while. So I don't know. Hopefully the second game does not suffer from the struggles that was the first few hours of it, but I don't know. People still praise the character and the story, and I'm a little bit not as into it as some of those people. But I did enjoy the gameplay, and I did enjoy just how beautiful the graphics are.
It is a gorgeous game. That is something I can't deny, is that, like, especially like when they put that photo mode out, I remember seeing so many pictures of just like insane things that people had choreographed and like taken these like beautiful like tilt shifted photos of.
Yeah. It is I don't even know how they're doing it, because the trailer we saw at like a State of Play a few months ago, I was like, this almost looks too good to be just like the normal, like you expect it to be like a pre-rendered cutscene and then to go into gameplay, but like that just was the gameplay that they were showing. So
I don't know. I mean, we have talked about this on the show, I think, but another thing I didn't like about that State of Play where they showed it is she has a grappling hook, but it's like the dumb kind of grappling hook where you can only grapple to grapple points.
Yeah.
Which I'm bummed about. And I still submit that in this new Breath of the Wild game, whenever it comes out, I think that it is likely that you will get some sort of hookshot, and that hookshot's going to be able to be used anywhere, because that game is going to be crazy. And there seems like there's floating islands. There's so many ideas. Like, I bet there's going to be like a swinging mechanic, but I have no idea. I mean, another thing about Horizon Zero Dawn, obviously, is it came out on the day that Breath of the Wild came out, so it's like very hard not to compare them.
Right. Yeah. Well, so how would the grappling hook work? You just like aim it like a gun and just shoot it anywhere, and you can sort of.
So here's another thing. Well, this is just going to turn into us talking about Breath of the Wild, but do you think that weapon durability will come back in Breath of the Wild too?
Ooh, that is a good question.
Because technically, you already have the Master Sword, unless they take it away from you. But I don't think they would, unless it like falls into a crevasse or something. But
that probably will happen.
You would have the one weapon that won't deteriorate, so it would kind of lessen the burn of all the rest of the weapons deteriorating. So I could see like, I'm on the fence about whether or not you're going to get like gadgets that have deterioration, like a hookshot. But because you got a boomerang in the last one, but that was basically just a weapon. But I could see them making you have a hookshot that would deteriorate over time, but you could shoot it anywhere, and then you could either climb up the rope or like swing from it. I have no idea. This is just something I was thinking about the other night. But I feel like because there is that vertical nature of this one now, that you're going to be in the sky, it's not just going to be flying around. You got to have other ways to get between places, I would imagine. But I don't know.
Well, so here's the thing. So you remember in that last trailer they showed, there was like some weird like green like water droplet like power where he like literally sucked his way up through a platform. I wonder if that's just what it is as opposed to like a hook shot.
Who can say? I mean, I would love for... I mean, that's something that was a core feature of Zelda games prior to Breath of the Wild, was getting like locations being gated by items. Like you would run through a temple and then you would see like, oh, I can't like cut through this rock, or like there's something mysterious about this pathway, and then you would get like the lens of truth and you'd be able to see it, or you'd get like gauntlets that would allow you to lift up really heavy boulders, things like that. And that progression is something a little bit that Breath of the Wild was lacking, because you basically were only increasing your hearts and stamina and whatnot. But who could say? I mean, I love Breath of the Wild, so I'd be fine if it was just like more Breath of the Wild with just like more places to explore. But I don't really know. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we will get some sort of big Nintendo Direct. Maybe like it could be closer to like Game Awards even.
I think Game Awards is definitely gonna... If we don't get the last Smash reveal before the Game Awards, I think there's a very high chance that the Game Awards is going to be... Because that's where they revealed the first Smash reveal, I think. And a good number of them have always been at the Game Awards. So I think it's likely that we'll either get Breath of the Wild stuff or a Smash reveal, or both.
My hope is both. I can definitely see the Smash reveal. The question mark is more about Zelda, which may not happen until sometime next spring. But
I don't know. Yeah, I am chomping at the bit for that game, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later to tease something I'm going to queue up.
Ooh, well. Moving on then, Casey Hudson, formerly of Bioware, created a new studio and announced a new IP. And let me click on this so that I can recall the name of it. Humanoid Studios. There's very, very little info about this, but I do think it's cool. Obviously, I'm very into Mass Effect, so Casey Hudson's had kind of a rocky road the past 10 years even, because I think he left BioWare, went somewhere else for a few years, and then went back to BioWare, and obviously the time he has spent at BioWare over the last 10, 15 years has been the games that have come out have not been necessarily received super well. So I do kind of wonder.
The dark times.
The dark times. I recall a time before the dark times. But anyway, I do still think it's cool, and I'm very curious. Hopefully the big turnaround for Casey Hudson is coming with this, and he has something cool to show. But it probably won't happen for a few years. Speaking of BioWare stuff, there have been some EA plays, and sadly, no info on Mass Effect or Dragon Age 4, but a lot of Battlefield 2042 stuff.
Yeah, they unveiled that Battlefield 2042 portal, which actually looks pretty interesting. It's sort of how would you call it? An insane version of Battlefield 2042?
Yeah, so it's like a... you know how with Halo they have these modes where you could sort of customize every aspect of it?
Yeah, the Forge, and people would invent new games within it, like that Griff Ball.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that, but I don't think you're going to be able to create something like that, maybe. But it's sort of Portal is taking old time warfare from the Battlefield games with the current era and then the future warfare and the Bad Company era, and they're sort of saying, okay, we have all these different assets and all these different sort of characters and kits and loadouts and all of this, and all these different vehicles from all these different eras, and we're going to allow you to build a crazy mode. One of the ones they showed was you have just a handful of modern soldiers, and they're going up against a whole bunch of World War II era soldiers. So obviously, the modern warfare people have the more advanced kits, and so they're probably a little bit more powerful, but there's they're outnumbered significantly by the World War II era people.
There was another one that was everyone on one side of the team just has defibrillators, then the other 80 people just had knives, or something like that. You know what it reminded me of when I was watching it is. Did you ever play or did you ever watch people play that Totally Accurate Battle Simulator? Tabs?
Yeah, where they could create dinosaurs versus something else weird.
Yeah, one wizard versus 100 chickens and things like that. It seems like that. I think it's going to be there's going to be curated modes, I think, but there's also going to be user generated stuff where the curated mode is hey, play in this tanks versus bomb defusal robots or something. Yeah,
that was one of the other ones they showed. It was there's one big old powerful tank versus 100 little drones that have little weapons on them.
And it much like Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. This is something I would love to watch happen, but I don't know that I want to be in it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it would be fun to watch. I do think Twitch streamers and YouTubers are going to have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. I will enjoy watching streams of this, for sure.
I like Battlefield games, so I'm pretty excited about it. I don't know how much time I'll spend actually playing that in particular, because I may just play the normal modes, but it would definitely be fun to watch. But let's get into the big news that has happened within the last week or two. Nintendo unveiled and has now put up for pre-order the Switch OLED model.
Yes.
it does. There's a lot of things it does not have. It is not the Switch Pro. I put up a post about this on StarsideCafe.com if you want to go read about my full opinions on it. But what did you think of this?
This is, I don't know when this is from. My mind is mush now. But do you remember there was some political thing that happened, maybe the last election, where I don't remember the context of this at all, but somebody referred to something as a nothing burger. Do you remember that?
Yes.
This is what I would describe as a nothing burger.
Yeah.
Because it's all it really is they changed the panel out. It's the same size. Like the Switch is the same size, just the screen is slightly bigger. The only, like, I would say probably the best thing about this isn't even the screen. It's they fixed the kickstand in the back to be a full kickstand. That's like, you can move it to different angles. But other than that, I mean, I don't super understand why this exists.
I feel like this is the kind of thing that should have just been like a, mid-cycle hardware revision. And where there
was not a ton of fanfare about it. They just like tweeted it out on like a Tuesday, like, hey, this is happening. Like they didn't make a big event out of it, which I think is good.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of it was like, okay, we're working on this Switch Pro or like a second gen Switch, but it's maybe not ready yet. And like currently Nintendo, especially because of the pandemic last year, like has sold more Switches than any other year of its life cycle.
For sure.
So like they almost don't need to release anything. But also when like the enthusiasts are playing games and thinking, man, I wish this had more power, or we're watching trailers for that next Pokemon game and thinking this could use a little bit more power. Yeah. Like people want it and expect it, and there was that Bloomberg report that talked about all the different things that the Switch Pro was going to have, and then this basically didn't have anything but the slightly larger OLED screen. There's a lot of things that it didn't get, like they didn't add Bluetooth support, so you can't connect Bluetooth earbuds to it. There's not like a fast charging, or they've not made the battery life any better. So I do assume that this will just be like they're phasing out the old model, like the original model of the Switch, and this will just be like the new one that they sell from now on.
I think that's probably true. I think that you're correct that there is a Pro, like a second gen in the works that's just like gotten very behind because of pandemic and chip shortages and whatnot. But I would be very surprised if Breath of the Wild 2 doesn't come bundled alongside some sort of new Switch that is the Switch Pro.
Which that's what makes me wonder if there is still like a Switch Pro or second gen Switch set to come out like next year or the year after that, like around the time, if not like at the same time, maybe like a few months before or after the new Zelda
I think
game.
It'll be day and date, just like Breath of the Wild came out with the Switch. Breath of the Wild 2 is going to come out with whatever they're calling the new Switch HD Pro digital, whatever they're going to call it.
Yeah, that would be ideal. Actually, now that I think about it, since you said Switch digital, I'm almost surprised they don't have two SKUs where one is like the PlayStation 5 and one's the PlayStation 5 digital, where they've got like one that's $100 cheaper that does not have a port for physical games.
Yeah, I mean, the way Nintendo has been going, there's so many indie games on the Nintendo eShop that will never get a physical release, and I'm sure they make a ton of money just on their digital stuff.
Yeah, it seemed to make sense, but I don't know. I also like the Switch OLED model is not a great name, but also like what do you call it? Because you can't call it Switch Pro.
No, you can't. I mean, you could maybe say something like Switch bright screen or new screen, or I don't know, some kind of marketing language that just focuses on the screen. But yeah, were just straight up went OLED model. I think they even do like Switch parentheses OLED model.
Yeah, it's a strange thing. And like you said, I think the only real I do think people will note, like people will go into Best Buy and they will see the OLED model sitting there next to the Switch Lite in particular, which is like a smaller screen that does not, to me, did not look even as nice as like the screen on the normal Switch model. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it was definitely smaller. And they're going to see that nice OLED screen that's larger, and they're going to be like, okay, I'm going to get one anyway. So, I mean, it's not like, you know, there's a history that we can look back on and be like, oh, yeah, Nintendo has a tendency to put out different models of its 3DS lineup, and everybody and their mom buys 5 of them. So,
yeah.
So I feel like this thing will do fine, even though we're not really seeing a point to it. But
something we should talk about, though, that we are very excited about is the actual handheld announcement.
Switch Pro.
Yes. The Big Mac, if you will.
Yeah, they should have called it that.
Well, I mean, as opposed to the Nothing Burger.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
The Steam Deck.
So did you put the $5 down to pre-order one of these?
I didn't, but the more I think about it, the more I want to, because like it's so enticing to me. For those that didn't know about it, it's like basically it looks like a Game Gear because it's so chunky.
Yeah.
But it is just like a little computer, a little Switch-like thing. It doesn't have detachable controllers or anything like that, but you can just like load up Steam OS on it, a special Steam OS variant, and your entire Steam library is there. And the really enticing thing to me about this is that it's dockable, and it basically just becomes a little Linux computer. Like it has an operating system on it. So you can dock it to like a little USB-C dock, and like you can have a monitor and a keyboard and mouse plugged into it. And it's basically a portable
computer.
Yeah. That you can just like carry around and have with you. And that's something that's very enticing me just from like a cyberpunk standpoint of just like, yeah, I'm going to carry around my computer with me.
Which, yeah, I mean, they basically said that you can run whatever you want on it. Like you can, if you wanted to, you could put Windows on it and you could basically have this as like an actual little PC with a screen attached to it. That's very cool to me. And I think initially I was like, this seems too expensive, and like the memory, like every time you go up, if you want like one with a higher memory, the price goes up exponentially. But the thing is, like a lot of games on Steam, like the base model of this thing, I think has, 64 gigs?
Well, so I've seen conflicting reports about how like DIY or like how swappable this is, because if it's some like proprietary NVMe stuff where like you have to buy specific form factors of an M.2 drive, that's bad and unfortunate. But if it is like open source and you can get like a 64 gigabyte model and then just go on Amazon and buy your own SSD and slot that in, that's awesome and something I'm super into. But I don't know. I've seen conflicting reports. One headline I read said like Valve doesn't recommend making hardware changes to this.
I thought they said that
the
you
other
couldn't.
You can't as well. Okay, that's what you heard?
Yeah, I mean, I had only heard that you could not do it because everything was so like, it's such a small form factor. Everything was packed super tight. And
see, I'm super interested to have someone get their hands on this and open it up and see like what it looks like on the inside.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're going to be able to do that, but I did end up putting the $5 down to pre-order one.
I might too. I mean, obviously, I think pre-orders are closed right now, maybe, or I'm not going to be able to get in as much. But I think I might put my money down on it too.
So I'm pretty excited about it because I do have a lot of games on Steam, and I also just in the time that I was able to pre-order it, I have been thinking more and more about, I need to get this game that's coming out on Steam as opposed to I need to get this on Switch or PS5 or whatever, because just that ability to take it portable with you is such a big thing. And the fact that this thing is more powerful than the Switch and you also have the option to like plug it into a monitor and play with keyboard and mouse on top of that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. I'm very excited about this. I think it is maybe more what the Switch Pro should have been, but oh, and I was saying I was put off a little bit by the price at first, but then I looked at it and like comparatively, so the base model starts at $400. The Switch OLED model's $350. So like $50 up from that is like not that bad, just based on how much more power you're getting with the Steam Deck and the fact that you're getting the Steam library as opposed to the Nintendo library.
Yes, I mean, there's been so many humble bundles where I was just like, yeah, this is like $15. I'll get it because I wanted one game in it. And then all of a sudden I've got like 50 games.
Yeah.
And you add all those codes and all of a sudden your Steam library is just insane.
Yeah, well, and they, like, every year they have their Steam summer sale and, like, games are available for, like, $2 or whatever. And so I'll be like, yeah, maybe one of these days I'll get around to playing that. It's only $2, might as well. And so I've added a lot of games to my Steam library over the past, like, handful of years just based solely on that. So, yeah, being able to play that stuff portably is pretty cool. Yeah, I think this is a big win for Steam in particular, and they're not even talking about like this as being like the handheld itself being like a big selling point for them, because they wanted to make it so that you could do anything with it. Like you could load up the Epic Game Store, you could load up like Origin or the Blizzard app or whatever, so you could potentially be playing like World of Warcraft on this, but also this is just like their version of it where they expect other people to make their own devices like this that can run Steam OS. So potentially other people could make a Steam Deck type of handheld that would run Steam OS, and then you'd be able to have access to Steam on some other type of device.
It's very cool and something I'm very interested in. I might end up getting one. We were talking about this before we started recording, but I might get a new phone this year, which would be a big investment because I'd probably try to get a flagship, like pretty expensive phone. Yeah. But in the grand scheme of things, $400 is not a ton of money if it's something you're going to be using for a couple of years, like more than a couple of years. But I don't know. It's very intriguing to me. I'm very excited for it to be released and for people to start like putting YouTube videos up about like reviewing it and opening it up and talking about it a bunch. It'll probably get me all jazzed for it, and I'll end up buying one.
Yeah, and the other thing about it is like potentially could have a long lifespan because like Steam doesn't really do console generations the way like Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo does.
Yeah.
But also with like cloud gaming becoming more and more a thing, like this could potentially be like an excellent Stadia like portable gaming device.
It's true.
And
it's very true.
That would completely free you up from having to worry about, okay, if I get this thing in like 3-4 years, there might be like a newer, better version of this that I will have to shell out again for. Like you may not have to.
They are going to release a dock for it. It's going to be sold separately, and it's we didn't really even see pictures of it, but I would bet that dock is going to have a dedicated like Ethernet port on it, which would make streaming, if you just like plug this thing over to your computer and connected it up, it would make it being a streaming platform a lot more viable.
Yeah. Well, and they did say that you don't have to wait for their version of the dock. You could just like go on Amazon and pick up like whatever cheap dock that you can find.
Yeah, there's 1,000 USB-C docks now that people are working from home and traveling with laptops.
Yeah, so I feel like their messaging on this has been very open to like, not being proprietary and like, you must buy our stuff and work through our stuff. They've been very open about like, this is just like a cool device that people can use for whatever they want.
It's just like their approach to VR, where like their VR headsets are completely open and you can play stuff from anywhere on them.
So yeah, I think I'm not alone in having pre-ordered the Steam Deck as opposed to the Switch OLED model. And I'm very excited to get one. I think they're supposed to be shipping them like in December, they said. So like it's possible by Christmas I'll be playing my Steam library portably, like while I'm hanging out with the family over the holidays. Mm-hmm. That sounds very appealing to me.
Yeah, the more we talk about it, the more excited I get about it. But I think we should talk about something to like level us out. Let's talk about something that we're both super not interested in.
Okay, so next up, a recent thing that was announced is Tom Clancy's X-Defiant. How into a free-to-play first-person shooter that combines all of Tom Clancy's big franchises are you?
0%, Zach.
Really? That surprises me, because you seem like a big Tom Clancy man.
Well, based on what?
I'm being sarcastic.
Oh. I mean, we did play a good amount of The Division together when it came out.
Yeah, so the really weird thing about this that has everybody on the internet just completely baffled is like Ubisoft is trying to take Tom Clancy into a weird new era where everything is like colorful and punk rock or whatever, as they say. But like Tom Clancy has always been like grounded and tactical and gritty, and like it's not over the top in any way. And so between them doing a Rainbow Six zombie shooter and now a free-to-play, like, colorful, over-the-top, like, basically Call of Duty clone, like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. I also don't know. It seems like they're lagging behind the times, because I feel like it was 2 or 3 years ago, whenever, oh man, what was that game called? What was that id game? That had a second one.
Rage 2?
Yes. When Rage 2 came out, that was the E3 where there were like 2 or 3 games that were just like, hey, what if there were just like bright flashes of pink dust everywhere? And people were like, oh, no, we don't like this. Stop doing this. I think Far Cry in the Future was also one where there's like, oh yeah, look at all this like bright stuff. Isn't this great? And everyone was like, no, this is gaudy. Stop doing this. And it seems like Tom Clancy is just like, hey, let's do that again, because I don't understand the appeal of this. Like, it's free to play. I guess that's something cool. They're trying to harness people just wanting to grind stuff, but I don't know, man.
It just also looks a little bit cel shaded, like they're almost trying to go for a Borderlands look.
Yeah,
and I don't know about you, but I'm not super into the Borderlands look. Like,
I don't understand the name. Like, why call it X-Defiant?
Isn't there like sort of an emoji in the like logo as well? It's like really weird.
It's like a laughing, smiling face. I guess, but if that's the only reason they did that, that's not great.
It is like a nonsense name that is just, I don't know.
Thumbs down.
They're trying to join like the Fortnites and the Apex Legends with like a free-to-play game that will supposedly make them a lot of money through microtransactions, but like,
I guess, yeah.
It's also not a battle royale.
No, I think it's like an Overwatch. Like you have written down here, it seems like an Overwatch competitor, which I think is accurate. Like it's like a hero-based thing where people have different abilities based on the characters, I think.
Yeah, that's the impression I got from the trailer for it. I don't know. The thing is, it just seems counter to what Tom Clancy games have always been, in a way that's like that meme of like, hello fellow kids.
Yes,
it looks like that, and so I don't know. I don't
think that's a great interpretation.
I don't think it's going to be good. It is free to play, so maybe I'll try it, because it is also going to be on a streaming service, so like I could play this for free on Stadia and not have to download it first. So I might try it just to see what it is, but I do not have high expectations at all.
You know, something we should talk about, because they talked about this during their like EA Play whatever, and the thing they ended on, their one more thing, was a remake of Dead Space. Are you interested in that?
Oh yeah, so I do. So I have not played the Dead Space games, but I watched my roommate in college play at least 1 or 2 of those games because he was really into them. And they're very creepy, but they're also like stylistically very cool. And the MinMax crew is doing a deepest dive on the first Dead Space game.
Yeah.
And so I think I might try to play that and sort of play along with their deepest dive series.
I will say I played the first one. I don't generally like scary things. I don't remember why I did this, but I played through a good portion of the first Dead Space, and I really enjoyed it. It like the pace at which you get new interesting weapons that don't act like any other weapons in any other games because there's such a focus on cutting off limbs is very satisfying, and it is very scary. And I think a remake, especially if they remake it in the sense of like whatever that Resident Evil game they remade was, where you're in that police station, where they went
Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, they went from how it looked in the past, where there were like set camera angles, and they transformed it into like a behind the shoulder type thing. If Dead Space, if they add like a first person mode, that would be insane and very, very scary. I don't know if that's on
I
the
feel like
table or
they
not.
couldn't do that because like the third person mode, being able to see like your health bar sort of on your back. Like I remember a big thing about the Dead Space games was being like there was basically no HUD or no like unnecessary HUD elements. It was all tied to like in.
That's true. It was like all holographic. It would like come up like when you walked up to a bench or whatever to fix your weapons, or like when you pressed pause, like just holographic stuff would come up and you would do it. And so you couldn't really pause, which is like really frightening.
Yeah, so I feel like that was a big element with those games. So I feel like they won't do a first person because they would remove a number of options that they would have to sort of
that's true.
indicate what's there for you. But I don't know. I'm kind of looking forward to it. I do want to download that and play it. But speaking of things that I want to download and play that I do not have on this list, oh gosh, what is the name of the game now? Death's Door just came out this week.
Yes.
And I'm very much looking forward to it. I have not started it yet. I did download it. I'm ready to play it. I just have not started it. It's basically, for anyone that does not know, it's like a sort of almost isometric looking Zelda-like game with a really cool art style where you play as a crow with like a red sword. And from what I've heard, it's about 8 to 10 hours long, so you could probably burn through it in a weekend.
I'm also planning to play that today. I am probably very shortly after we get done going to download and play it. The thing that pushed me over, I was already interested in it, but I was watching one of the MinMax guys, and he likened it to Hyper Light Drifter, which is one of my favorite games of all time. Yeah. And that was just like, I was already going to download it, but that made me super excited for it.
Yeah, so this is one of the ones that I was looking forward to most after seeing it at E3 this year. So I can't wait to jump in and play it. Maybe we should do a video about it.
I'm into that, yeah.
Both of us end up playing it. So.
The one bummer thing about it is it's not going to be on Switch anytime in the near future, and it's not on PlayStation. So if I want to play it on a couch...
Gotta get the Steam Deck.
I know, that's basically the only option. But I mean, I'll play it on my computer, and it'll be fine, but...
Actually, I haven't looked. Is this also... I don't think you have a laptop, but I was going to say some...
I have a work
games,
laptop.
Yeah. I was going to say, because I have a MacBook, and so I'm always looking for games that are also downloadable on Mac so that I can take it with me and have like the cloud save there. And a lot of indie games actually have surprised me, like Loop Hero and a game we may talk about here in a second, Grifflands, that came out earlier this year. I've been playing, and they also are downloadable on Mac, and so I can sort of take them to go with me, just having them on my MacBook. So that's pretty cool. Do we dare jump into some of the mid-year games that we think are going to end up on our top 10
I don't have
list?
a lot. We can just briefly touch on them.
Okay.
You already talked about one that was maybe my favorite this year. Loop Hero is something that at my previous job, about once a month, I would have to do a very monotonous task after hours where I would basically log into a bunch of servers and run a script and then basically click a button once every like half hour. And Loop Hero is the perfect game for that because you load it up and you're like the game almost plays itself. And so I would just like put on a really nice playlist of music. Like one screen would be my work and the other screen would be Loop Hero. And I would just endlessly go on loops. And I love it. I love the aesthetic of it. I love the music of it. I love the weird interactions you have. As far as games I've played this year, that's my number one that is probably going to be on one of my top 5 lists.
So for me, I mean, Loop Hero is definitely up there as well. I would throw out Persona 5 Strikers. That was a game I played way back in like March, I think, and really enjoyed just because I like the Persona series, and Persona 5 was one of my favorite games that year. And so getting more time with that crew and just I was surprised how much I enjoyed the Muso style combat with it. So that one may probably end up somewhere on my top 10 list. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, I did finish that like a few weeks ago and really enjoyed it. It's like everybody says it's basically like a Pixar movie that you can play, and it very much is that. It's sort of got that almost even like the Marvel superhero thing of just being like a story that really does a good job of sort of balancing character moments, but also like humor and sort of big like action moments that are just like really, really satisfying. This very well could have just been like a movie that was like a big summer blockbuster that everybody would find really satisfying. It's that good, and it looks so good running on PS5, and I played it in performance mode, and so it looked great the whole way through. So I really, really enjoyed that game. This is the only Ratchet and Clank game I've ever played, so it's not like I'm a longtime fan of the series. So I was impressed by how much it sort of got its hooks in me while I was playing it. But another little game that I've been playing sort of off and on this year is Legend of Keepers. I think that's sort of the little game that could. I don't think anybody's really talking about it ever, but
you got it for me, and I played it a little bit, and I enjoyed what I played of it.
Yeah, so I like turn-based combat games every now and then, and I like the turn-based combat system that this game has, and I kind of like how it sort of is structured around like a timeline where you're sort of going week to week and making these little decisions that are sort of going to help you get beefed up and ready to handle another wave of like incoming attackers that you can sort of defend your dungeon from. There are 3 different characters right now. They're adding a 4th. Yeah, I don't know. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I will probably still every once in a while jump back in and play a little bit more of it. Another game is Chivalry 2. I've talked about this a couple of times now. I just think it's so silly and so fun to just run around and just like hack and slash and just like hack somebody's arm off, and you get into these like 1v1 battles where like you're just running around the battlefield and you just happen to see somebody's like, all right, I'm gonna take this guy down. And it's a lot more thoughtful than like a shooter multiplayer game where you're just kind of running and gunning everywhere. In this game, you have to be like, okay, he's going to attack and I'm going to block and counter, and or I'm going to dodge. And then once I attack, he's going to block. So I'm going to block this time. And then next time, instead of attacking, he's going to think I'm attacking. So I'm going to kick him and break his block. And that'll give me an opening. And so you have all these little things like that are happening. And just like, when I can also run around and like somebody else is having that interaction where there's like one guy on my team and one guy on the other team and they're fighting, they don't know I'm there, and I'll walk up and I'll do like a big heavy overhead slam and just like one shot the guy. It just, there are a few things more satisfying than just running around and pulling off one of those big like hacks that just like destroys somebody. It's hilarious. And I just like most multiplayer games, I will get a little bit frustrated with after a while. I'm like, okay, I need to like take a break from this because it's getting annoying. But like this game is just so silly and so fun that I'm basically laughing the whole time I'm playing it. Because there's also like it knows how silly it is as well, because like when you spawn, you run in and there's like literally a button to just start shouting and screaming because you're like a warrior running into battle head first. And so when you hear you and like everyone else on your team screaming, and some of the voices that do the screaming sound really silly too. It's a hilarious game that I think is also really, really fun.
Man, I need to watch some footage of it.
You definitely should. I've been returning to it at least like once a week since it came out and getting a few more matches in, and have been having a lot of fun with it. And then I did play Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, but that's like a sort of a smaller, like I want to say 6-hour thing, which I enjoyed quite a bit, but just because it's so small and it's not like a full game, it probably won't end up on my top 10 list. But there was some cool stuff there that I also don't want to talk too much about because I don't want to spoil anything for you because you have not had a chance to play it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at some point I will get a PS5 because at some point the next Final Fantasy remake will come out, and I will then get to play Intergrade. But until then, I just have to wait.
Yeah. Another little game that I want to point out just because I think it's very cool is a game called Overboard. I put out like a really brief little video where I basically talked about what the game is and sort of recommended it. That's on our YouTube channel. It's sort of what do you call it? It's sort of a visual novel, I guess, but not really. I guess I'm not super versed in like visual novel genre of games, but it's got a cool little sort of cartoony art style to it, and it's a murder mystery game where at the beginning of the game, this woman pushes her husband off the top deck of a ship. It's sort of set in like the 1940s, I want to say, and you're going from England to the US, and so she murders her husband, and then you wake up the next morning and you're like, well, we've got 8 hours until the ship hits the US, and I have to convince everyone that either I don't know what happened to my husband, don't know how he died, or I have to convince them that somebody else killed him. And so basically you're having all these interactions, and you're talking to different people on the ship, and you're trying to sort of throw them off the scent. And it's almost a roguelike because every conversation you have sort of advances time like a little bit. And so you can kind of make a run in, I want to say, like a fairly short amount of time. So you could play and replay this over and over again. And the idea is that every time you sort of go through the loop and you talk to everybody, you're sort of learning more about each character and your character that you're playing and the situation and sort of everybody's relation to everyone else. And so you're constantly learning more. And in that sort of, what is the name of that movie? Groundhog Day.
Oh,
you're
yeah.
sort of learning, okay, well, this didn't work. Let me try this a different way this time. And so you're sort of progressing further and figuring out different solutions to different conversations. And so it's really, really interesting. And I want to say there are just so many different ways that it can play out. Like I've heard that it's possible to kill everyone basically on the ship. And I've definitely failed a number of times where they knew it was me and they caught me and I ended up in jail at the end. And I've also gotten off a couple of times where I was able to convince everybody that it was like a suicide and I had nothing to do with it, but I have not successfully incriminated anybody just yet. I have successfully killed one or two other crew members or other people on the ship. So yeah, I think it's such a small little game, but there's so much to it and it's so much fun. That I highly recommend it.
Interesting.
And then the last one I'll point out is a game called Grifflands, which is sort of a Slay the Spire. Are you aware of that game? It's
yes,
sort of
card-based.
Yeah. It's got a cool art style. This came out not too long ago. And I'm not super far into it, but there's sort of the idea is that there are sort of two different decks that you're building up. So you have like a conversation deck and you have like an attack, like combat deck.
Oh, interesting.
And so, yeah, you can basically talk your way out of situations, which I think is an interesting twist on like the card-based, turn-based combat type of a thing. To be like, oh, now we're going to do this, but it's like conversation. So you're talking your way out of a situation rather than fighting. And of course, if you keep fighting and you end up killing a lot of people, you start gaining a reputation for being like violent and all of this. And so it's interesting how those kind of play into it as well. I need to play more of it and learn more about it and how all the systems work, but it's one to definitely check out, especially if you like deck builders or turn-based combat.
I'm looking through. Oh, I only had one other one. Well, we were talking about making this list, and so I only had only one other real one, and that was Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. I beat the 3D World part of that, and I beat Bowser's Fury, both of them with my girlfriend, and both of them were a ton of fun. And it's also pretty short. Like, I say that.
The Bowser's Fury part is short.
The Bowser's Fury part is short. I beat technically the main story of 3D World, but there keep being extra levels that get progressively harder. I don't know how long it goes for, but you keep basically discovering new worlds that are just like bonus. But that was really, really fun. And then the thing that doesn't really count is that 1.5 update for Stardew Valley came out that added co-op for Switch and also a ton of other stuff. And me and my girlfriend played for that, like, the longest I've ever... I think I made it to, like, year 2, which I'd never made it to before. Or maybe, like, year 3 even. But that was also a ton of fun. Stardew Valley is one of the best games ever made. But it didn't come out this year. Just the 1.5 update came out.
Yeah. I beat the Bowser's Fury part, but I did not beat the Super Mario 3D World part of that game.
It gets a lot easier because you can play that co-op as well. So, like, both of us could be in there playing around. And if someone died, you basically just have to... One other person has to stay alive, and then you can... It gets a lot easier. Another thing I really appreciated about 3D World... is if you die 5 times in a row, they just like give you an invincibility suit, which is great. That's great game design, and I loved whenever I saw that. It didn't make me frustrated at all or make me feel bad. I just like was excited to not have to deal with stuff and get through a level.
Yeah, that is cool. I need to get back to that and play some more of it. I was really enjoying it. It came out so long ago, I almost forgot about it, but it is like a cool way to sort of remake and re-release a game to have like an additional thing that's brand new to it. So that's
cool. I mean, the Bowser's Fury was super, super fun, and I still haven't gotten all of the cat shines. I just like made it through the world, and I would probably say I have over half of the cat shines, but there's still a ton to get.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly good amount of content for something that's sort of relatively short, you would think, but they have sort of a lot. If you want to, there's a lot more you can do with it. So,
do you want to briefly talk about stuff we've been watching?
Well, before we do, I got a couple other games that I could talk about very, very briefly. I'll just say, speaking of Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, around that same time, maybe a little bit before that, was Little Nightmares 2 that I played that I really enjoyed, that I still kind of want you to play so we can talk about how that game
I need to.
ends.
I have it on Stadia, but I started playing the first one on Switch. I maybe should not have bought the first one on Switch because it's not a super great port. And I'm wondering if I can just skip to the second one. Have you played both of them?
I only played the second one.
Maybe I should just start playing the other one on Stadia. Because there were some things I did not like about the first one, and I kept looking at trailers for the second one and really wanting to start that one.
It is pretty good, and it's very crazy where that game goes, and so I'm very curious for your take on it. But anyway, another game I would point out, Genesis Noir. I did like a
a video where I talked about several games I was playing, and this was included in there. It's just sort of a visual feast that you almost have to see to kind of understand why it's something worth checking out. It's I don't even know how to explain the art style of it. It's like cartoony, but like it's going for sort of a 1930s, 40s noir vibe. But even that gets like really, the more you play the game, it gets very dreamlike, and just it's crazy how that game looks. So I definitely recommend at least like looking up some videos on that game.
Okay.
And then did I have some? Oh yeah, I will say briefly, speaking of, because we talked about Dead Space a little bit and how it's not normally the type of game we would play. I played, believe it or not, Resident Evil Village a little bit. I have not finished it, but back when it came out, I picked it up because I knew everybody was going to be talking about it. And the only Resident Evil game I've played previously was Resident Evil 5, which is like the arcadey co-op shooter that everyone is like is not a Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
So I felt I owed it to myself to try a game that everybody considers a good Resident Evil game. And it is like maybe a little too creepy for me, even though it's not. It's supposed to be one that's not very scary.
Mm-hmm.
I have made it through the castle section, and that is the Lady Dimitrescu section of the game. Mm-hmm. And I get it. I don't know if it's necessarily my cup of tea, but like I can definitely understand, like just from like a game design and gameplay perspective, why it's so beloved. Because you're sort of stealthing around like a castle, looking for sort of that Zelda thing of, I need this thing that will open this next door so I can explore this next area. And then you encounter like a boss fight of some sort, and then you're like, okay, I made it through that. I need to run back to the safe room and save my game and buy a few upgrades for my weapons and stuff like that, and then venture back out again. And like the whole time, this like big creepy scary thing is like, you know, there's somewhere in the castle looking for you, and you just have to like try to sneak around and get to where you need to go. And so, and they'll inevitably, they will spot you and start chasing you. And so it's this constant sort of stress of like, somebody's right behind me, I need to run up and unlock this door and get through there. And you're like slowly watching the animation of like the lockpick thing go into the door, or the key to go into the door to open it. And you know, they're like right on your tail. And so it is a very stressful game for me. And so I have only ever been able to play it in like short, like 20-30 minute spans, where I will like clear sort of the next checkpoint, hit save, and be like, okay, I need to like do something else. And so I've been very, very slowly, methodically going through it that way, but it's very cool, and I can understand why people are like, this is why the series is very good. So I can appreciate it without necessarily having it be like one of my top games of the year. But I think that wraps up about everything I've been playing that I wanted to mention for this anyway. So go ahead and tell me what you've been watching.
Well, the main thing I want to talk about is I watched Fast 9. It was the first movie I went to go see after the pandemic. Well, I guess the pandemic is still ongoing, but they've relaxed some of the regulations where I am at. I went to go see it in D-Box, which means the seats like moved around with this with what was happening on the thing. So it was very cool. It was like being in a roller coaster, and it was great. It was a great movie to end not seeing movies in theaters with. Highly recommended. Very excited for Fast 10 and 11.
I have not seen the series. I don't know. I don't know if that's a shame or if it's.
It is. It's very insane, the trajectory of this story. And I think that you don't really need to watch the first 4 of them. I think you can watch 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 and just be totally fine and just like pick everything up. It would be interesting to go directly from 1 to 5 because that would be just like a big shock. And I think maybe that is the way to do it, is because 2 and 3 and 4, I actually have never seen 4, but I don't like 3. And 2 I only barely remember. But it really starts to pop off at 5, and I think it just goes up and up and up, and they keep topping themselves. And very excited to see where 10 and 11 end up.
Oh yeah, I was going to mention my mystery thing.
Oh yeah, your mystery.
So I am partway into season 3 of Attack on Titan.
Ooh.
So when last time we talked, I had only seen the first season, so I've made some progress.
That is music to my ears. So what is happening in the story right now?
So it's been a little time.
Have they reached the basement yet?
They've talked about it, but they have not gone there. I feel like it's going to be a while before they get there.
What could be in that basement, Zach?
I don't know. I'm still waiting to find out. But the last thing I remember was they were in that like sort of, it almost looked like ice cave area, and they had the main character chained up, and they were gonna steal his power for someone else, and she was like, nah, not doing that, I'm a rebel. And so her father ended up doing it anyway, but he became this like crazy like beast on 4 legs, and he's like huge, and he's running around, and they're like chasing him, trying to figure out how to stop him. And that's the last thing I remember, so I'm somewhere in that area.
You are getting pretty close to that basement, Zach.
Oof, I gotta keep watching then.
I'm very excited for you to watch more because man, it's one of the rare shows where, unlike Lost, where they keep building stuff up and then there's kind of like a letdown, each time there is a mystery that's been like, oh, what is this? It keeps getting better and better. And it's like goes places I did not expect.
I'm very excited to keep watching it.
Man, it's exciting. I'm excited for you.
And I will say, a little bit more Game of Thronesy than I would have thought for a show that you like a lot, because it seems like they're discarding characters left and right.
Yes, there are a couple of character deaths that are will really shake you to your core, which I was sad about, but the story is just so good.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's why everybody was invested in Game of Thrones for so long, and then it disappointed. So I'm hoping that's not what happens here.
I don't think it will. I think you're going to be very pleasantly surprised.
Okay, I'm excited then.
So should we wrap it up for the day, or do you have anything else you were watching?
I guess I forgot to mention one other thing I've been playing. Have you ever played the Ys series?
Spell that.
YS.
No, I don't know what that is.
So the Ys series is like a JRPG. It's like an action RPG series that's been around basically as long as Final Fantasy, but it has not, like, I don't know, caught on here in the West the way Final Fantasy has. And this year, so I watch the Happy Console Gamer on YouTube a lot, and he's always praising the Ys series and hoping more people will get into it. And so I started this year. Stadia brought Ys 8 to Stadia Pro for free. I have not played that, but I want to, and I probably will as soon as I'm done with Ys 9, which just came out this year, and it came out on PS4 and I want to say PC earlier this year, but it recently got a Stadia and Switch release. Mm-hmm. And so I've been playing Ys 9 on Stadia, and I am really enjoying it. I don't think it's the best game I've ever played, but it's like... So another game I've been playing sort of off and on is Scarlet Nexus. And the thing about Scarlet Nexus is it has these really intense, like, difficulty spikes that are, like, blindsiding. Like, you're, like, cruising along, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, I don't think I'm going to get through this game. And so as a break from that, I've been playing Ys 9, and Ys 9 is not like, there are some boss fights that can be somewhat difficult, but it's like, I don't know, so much, I don't want to say easy, but it is easier, and I like the combat. I mean, I like the combat of Scarlet Nexus as well, but like, I don't know, somehow I find going to Ys 9 a little bit refreshing after getting so frustrated with like some of the boss fights in Scarlet Nexus.
Is it like Final Fantasy in that Ys 9 has nothing to do with Ys 8?
Yeah, so like the only thing is the main character, Adol, is persistent across most of the games. I think Ys Origin is like something that comes sort of before everything, so I don't think he's in that game, but yeah, you basically don't need to have played the other games. They're kind of self-contained little adventures that you can go on. And Ys 9 does some cool things. So it's called Ys 9 Monstrum Nox, and basically you start out in a prison in like this big prison city, and you're like trying to break out, and you go down like through the basement area, and some like mysterious figure comes up, and she's like, I need you for something. And you're like, what? What's going on? And she like shoots you with this magic bullet and turns you into a monstrum. And basically that means you just have these special abilities. It's almost like X-Men. It awakens some sort of weird magical ability you have. And for Adol, it's being able to like teleport to like certain points around the map, around the stage that you're on. And there are a bunch of others as well, other monstrum that you interact with, and basically every chapter of the game is dedicated to meeting and interacting with another monstrum. And they all, as you sort of add more of them to your party, their special abilities sort of become your special ability as well. And one of them, the first one you meet, has the ability to basically wall run, so you can run up a wall or up the side of a building. And then the next person you meet is basically can glide down. So basically you eventually get to a point where you can run up the side of a tall building, and once you get onto the roof, you can like, you'll find a chest or some sort of collectible thing, and then you glide down, and then you use your teleport ability to go like across to another thing. And so traversal ends up becoming like a really fun aspect of the game. And it's, you can also like swap to the different party members in combat, and each has like a different special attack type that you need depending on what enemy you're fighting. And so you're swapping characters back and forth that way as well. The one thing is, they're not attractive games. So like the Final Fantasy series has been sort of at the forefront of like visual graphical prowess, basically, for many years now, where they all look really spectacular. Ys is not that serious. It's basically, they almost look like a generation behind. So
really?
Don't like look at a trailer for the game and think, oh, this does not look good, I'm gonna skip it. Like, don't sleep on the game. It's very fun to play. Like the combat is fun, the traversal is fun, and I'm enjoying the characters as well. So that's on Stadia. It's out for pretty much everything, I think. Worth giving a shot even if you've never played the Ys series before.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that before.
Yeah, so definitely worth checking out. But why don't you give us your parting wisdom?
Zach, I'd like to do a thought experiment real quick.
I'm thinking.
Describe to me what blinds look like.
Well, they either hang vertically or horizontally, and they block light from your window.
And how do you stop them from blocking light?
You turn a little thing that rotates them.
Or what else could you do?
You pull a cord that lifts them.
Now, interesting that you would say that. I was in the market for some new blinds, and so I went to a hardware store, and I was trying to buy some blinds, and I would say 100% of the blinds that I was able to purchase were cordless blinds. Have you seen those?
I have not.
They are the new standard, and I don't know how they work. They do work, but I just don't understand them. So I bought some, and they look like regular blinds, and the way that you bring them down over the window is you just pull on the bottom of them. And then they stop wherever you stop pulling them.
It's like
and if you want them to
screen.
go up, you just push them up. And I can't figure out the mechanic behind that. Like, it's not a thing where you pull all the way down and then it becomes like it's going to suck it back in like a flap or something. It just always is at the point where you put it. And it's the only kind of blinds that they sell, I guess, now.
Weird.
I went to Walmart, I went to Home Depot, and I went to Menards. In all three of those places, the only blinds I could find were cordless blinds. It's like the new industry standard, and no one is talking about it.
Yeah, I have not ever shopped for blinds in my life, so this is news to me.
It's interesting, and I want to know more about it, but I also don't care enough to investigate. But if you're in the market for new blinds, don't be intimidated by cordless blinds. It seems like they're not going to work because they don't have a cord, but they will.
Ooh, it's very modern.
That's my parting wisdom.
It's pretty good, I guess.
All right, well, we'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.